Hi, everybody. I'd like to welcome Alana into our guest expert section. Alana is an intuitive nutrition coach or an expert, and she's going to tell you everything you need to know about it to get familiar with it and see if it's something you'd like to implement into your life, or perhaps not, who knows, but I'm sure after this talk, there'll be definitely some interesting piece of information for you to digest. Hi, Alana.
Hi, Natalia. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Alana, could you tell our spectators a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Alana Vandersloos, and I'm a certified intuitive eating counselor, which means I'm basically an intuitive eating coach. I'm the founder of Freedom with Food and Fitness, which is an online community where I coach both men and women. Basically, the philosophy of intuitive eating, how to implement intuitive eating, and how to achieve and pursue health without diets, obsession, or restriction.
All right, fantastic. I'm not sure that everybody here knows what intuitive eating actually is. Could you go a little bit more into details of intuitive eating?
So, intuitive eating is an anti-diet philosophy. It is backed by over 100 scientific studies regarding its validity as a way to pursue health without diet. So, although some people may lose weight with intuitive eating is not another diet. It doesn't have weight loss as the primary goal. The primary goal of intuitive eating is to, again, it's an avenue. If health is a goal of yours, it's not a goal for everybody, and no one has a moral obligation to be pursuing health for themselves. But if you are someone who wants to pursue health, intuitive eating is a way to pursue health without dieting, without calorie restriction or macro counting, or having to get to a certain goal weight. It's basically eating intuitively, which intuition means trusting your own body, listening to your own body. So you eat when you're hungry, you stop when you're full, you honor your cravings, and you do keep in mind general nutritional guidelines that were given, from the organizations that gives those things to us, and you still move your body or exercise in a way that feels good to you and that you can stay realistically consistent with. So there is a nutrition and an exercise component to intuitive eating, but it's much more of a gentler approach to both of those things. It's not, rigid eating plans or counting or measuring or weighing or any of those things where you're trying to have a really tight grip on some sort of goal weight or goal or body aesthetic. It's just very natural, listening to your own body and letting your body settle where it was always genetically meant to settle.
That sounds fascinating and something that I definitely love to try, is when you're not framed, when you actually have the freedom and you have to listen to your body. It's an interesting approach, and I haven't heard much of it. How did you come up with it? Like, what led you to this approach or to implementing this approach into your life and teaching it?
Sure. So when I was in my 20s, well, actually, I'm going to back up even further than that. I came to this work of intuitive eating because when I was a child, I I excelled like in school and extracurricular activities, and I was always able to kind of measure my performance with things like grades, right? And I kind of knew my place in the world and knew my worth based on those things, those metrics. And then when I graduated college, I was kind of in the quote unquote adult world, the real world, where there's no grade, there's no measurement of like how worthy you are. And I felt very untethered. I felt very out of control. I didn't know kind of my place in the world. And it was the first time in my life that I didn't have this sense of control. I didn't know what my next move was in life. And I decided, as many people do when they start a diet, is I wanted to take control of something because we don't want to feel like we have no control over our lives. So I took control of my weight and I was like, okay, I want to get down to this goal weight. And I started restricting my calories. I started like following a diet and I got down to my goal weight. And when I got there, I didn't feel a sense of accomplishment, really. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel any more confident in my body, or that I had really, I guess, achieved anything. And then I was like, okay, well, you know what, maybe another 5 pounds. And then I would get down to that weight and I still didn't feel that way. And then it would be another and another. And it became this goal of, I want to be as thin as I can, because that's what I felt like would make me pretty and would make me worthy in a time where I didn't know how to measure my worthiness. So I ended up with 3 different eating disorders over the course of 7 years in my 20s. Yeah. I had binge eating disorder, which is basically when you go through these binge restrict cycles. You restrict your calorie intake. You're very, people might phrase it as they're eating really clean or eating really good during the week. And then by the weekend, I was so malnourished and suffering from a lack of variety in my foods and sick of restricting myself from the things I really wanted to eat, that on the weekends, after a cocktail or two with my girlfriends and my inhibitions were lowered, I was like, I deserve that XYZ food and I'm going to eat it because I've been so good all week, and I would eat it, but I would binge on it. I would eat way too much food in one sitting, and then I would physically feel really uncomfortable. I felt so much shame because then I was like, oh my gosh, I undid all the good, quote unquote, that I did during the week. I'm going to gain all this weight. I've undermined my goal weight. Starting Monday, I have to be good again. I have to start eating clean again, and then the cycle would continue and continue. So that was my binge eating disorder. And then I also had body dysmorphia, which is when you fixate on either a very minor flaw that you have, or just a perceived flaw, like a flaw you don't even really have. And for me, it was my stomach. That's always the place I was really self-conscious about. And I would constantly body check. I would always go to the mirror, lift up my shirt and then do it again and again. And I would spend collectively probably hours a day doing this, thinking, it was going to change somehow, but I was very insecure about that part of my body. And no matter how thin I became, I never saw that part of my body as okay. I never arrived at where I thought I needed to look. And a lot of that's based on genetics, but that's a whole different conversation. So, and then I also had orthorexia, which kind of went with my binge eating disorder. Orthorexia is where you're very fixated on clean eating. Like there are good foods and bad foods and safe foods and, foods you're not supposed to eat. And I got myself down to 10 foods that I was allowed to have. It was boiled chicken, egg whites, oatmeal, vegetable, it was very, very rigid. And, you say what you want about nutrition, obviously more nutritiously dense foods are better for your overall health than, cake and ice cream all day long. But when we're coming from a place of fear, you're fearing these foods, you're actually afraid of them, and you can't eat them without going into a anxious shame spiral, that's a problem. There could be too much of a good thing. And that's what orthorexia was for me. So I ended up finding intuitive eating on Instagram and on podcasts. And I was listening to these podcasts with these women who had gone through the same things that I had gone through. And I was like, oh my God, this is a thing. I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. People have these behaviors and they're a problem and there's a way to fix it. And I was just I immersed myself in this world of intuitive eating and health at every size and body positivity. And I was like, oh my God, I don't have to live like this. And I don't think a lot of women realize you don't have to diet. You don't have to be always pursuing this goal weight or this goal body. And it blew my mind. So it took a while to heal. But I used books and podcasts and Instagram to really heal myself from my eating disorders. And I've been an English teacher, a high school English teacher for 11 years at this point. And during the pandemic, we were all home and had nothing to do. And I just started thinking, I was like, I have this skill of teaching, which is very similar to coaching. And I have this burning passion for intuitive eating because it saved my life. How can I marry those two things and help other people who are going through what I was going through? And that's how Freedom with Food and Fitness was born. That's how I got my certification to be an intuitive eating counselor. So it's been a long journey, but it's made me really happy to see that my struggles weren't in vain, and now I can kind of give back.
That sounds like an awesome story, honestly, and like that you've got a lot of experience and had to go through a lot yourself. However, you mentioned a lot of times body positive and body positivity, and there is a lot of misuse of this kind of term, if I could put it that way. And people think that, oh, I'm just gonna let myself go, and I'm just not going to do anything, whatever. I'm body positive. I accept myself as I am. And even if they're the most unhealthiest people. So intuitive eating, is there a misconception too? Like, is it like, does it also have this meaning, the wrong meaning probably, of like just letting yourself go, and then you say, oh, no, I'm just using intuitive eating. It's fine. This is my new style. So is there something?
There absolutely is a misconception about intuitive eating as this, letting yourself go, not caring about your health anymore. And it is the exact opposite. Our main goal, my main goal as an intuitive eating counselor with my clients, is getting you to be your healthiest, happiest, most confident self. But we just do it without that white knuckling grip of the diet, which you don't need. And the science actually tells us doesn't work long term. If we look at the scientific studies, diets work in the short term, but they're typically too restrictive and strict for us to maintain in the long term. So we quit them. So they don't work long term. Most people who go on diets, once they stop the diet, they regain that weight within 1 to 5 years. That's the science. That is what we're seeing. So it's not a process of letting yourself go, because there are 10 principles to intuitive eating. One of them is gentle nutrition, which again, we want you to drink a lot of water and eat fruits and vegetables and protein and fiber. And it's just that we're not saying, you can't have carbs, carbs are bad. It's how can you add in more healthful foods into your diet instead of taking things away. So instead of saying, I can't have carbs, I can't have cake, I can't have whatever, instead ask yourself, how can I add in veggies to this meal? How can I add in more protein? How can I add in more fiber? How can I drink more water? How can I find a way to fit in more exercise or movement into my day and do it more consistently within the realistic confines of, everybody's busy schedule? So it's coming from a place of abundance as opposed to a place of like fear and scarcity, which is what diets tend to do. Also, there's a principle of joyful movement. That's what we call it, joyful movement. We use movement as a term in place of exercise, but they're really interchangeable. But basically, instead of saying, diets will tell you have to work out for an hour every day, and you have to sweat, and you have to be so sore you can't walk the next day, and it has to be like this brutal thing that you do to yourself because you're so dissatisfied with your body. But with intuitive eating, it's more, okay, let's take a more gentle approach. What do you enjoy doing for movement? It doesn't have to be CrossFit or spin class or Pilates. It could be walking or dancing or gardening, although it could be CrossFit. It's whatever you like to do. And then taking a look at your schedule and realistically figuring out when you could implement movement in your day. So, the science says that 10 minutes, 10 bouts of exercise will get you cardiovascular benefits, and 15 minutes of exercise a day will pretty much get you all of the health and longevity benefits that we typically say that we're looking for when we're exercising for health. You don't need this hour. The powers that be, the organizations that tell us about, the exercise requirements for health, they say 75 to 150 minutes per week. So that's about 20 to 30 minutes, 5 days a week. So I think that's really reasonable for anyone to fit into their schedule. They say to do a mixture of cardio and strength training, but again, it doesn't have to be the treadmill. Cardio is anything that gets your heart rate up, and strength training doesn't have to be dumbbells and lifting weights. It could just be some sort of body resistance training. So it's just, again, kind of zooming out the lens and getting rid of the rules and figuring out ways that you can do this from a place of body respect and abundance and positivity, as opposed to, white knuckling restriction.
That sounds amazing, but it also sounds like many people live by these rules without actually knowing that this is intuitive nutrition, or perhaps it's still something, that they need. So for example, let's take myself when I'm not pregnant, or like my son says, when I'm unpregnant. Let's take me. So I eat relatively healthy. I don't have any eating disorders. I exercise, at my own pleasure. Do I still need an intuitive nutrition coach?
It depends. It really depends. I feel like there's some form of disorder anytime we are trying to manipulate our weight for the sake of the weight. Everybody has encoded in their genetics a weight set range, and that's maybe 5 to 10 pounds where your particular body feels the most comfortable, runs most optimally, and is the most healthy. And for everybody, that's different. Even if you have somebody, I'm 5'4", even if you have somebody else who's 5'4", that doesn't necessarily mean that we're both going to be the same weight. Our genetics are different, and your ancestry, your history, that all has a really big hand in how big or small your body is. And not everybody is going to be naturally thin. And I think part of the issue that people run into is, they all want to be the same weight. They all want to be thin, but the reality of it is not everybody can. And that's just a genetic thing. So you kind of have to make a decision. Do you want to fight your genetics and your body your entire life trying to get down to a weight that you think you should be? Or are you just going to kind of embrace your body as it is and respect it and appreciate it and feed it and move it in a way that feels good to it, instead of trying to force it into a box it wasn't ever meant to be? And a lot of the work I do with clients is debunking diet culture and debunking these myths that we hear about thinness in relation to health. Scientists are starting to see this thing called the obesity paradox. And what the obesity paradox is showing us in science is that people who are slightly overweight on the BMI scale, the body mass index scale, they actually live longer than people who are normal, quote unquote, normal weight, underweight, or obese. It's a slightly overweight category that seems to do the best, live the longest, have the best longevity. And it's stumping scientists a little bit, because we've been told all this time that the thinner you are, the healthier you are. And it's like, oh wait, what is this? So some of the theories that they're coming up with is it might be that people who are slightly overweight get more time with their doctor, more medical care. And the other theory is that the cushion, the extra weight, is protective of vital organs and bones as we age. And, when we get into our 70s, 80s, 90s, when, cancers start to increase, and, I guess typically we're all going to die of maybe some sort of cancer or chronic illness in the end. When we get those chronic illnesses, we tend to lose weight. Like, people tend to kind of waste away. And if you have a little more meat on your bones, you waste away, more slowly. You have weight to lose. So it's another kind of protective measure. But, really debunking this idea that thin is better, thin is more beautiful. It's all bullshit. It's all a social construct. Really, it wasn't until the 1900s that thin people were considered more attractive and better. In the 1800s, from the 1500s to the 1900s, it was, if you were a fuller figure, you were considered to be more fertile, you were considered to be of a higher social class, and you were considered, of the upper echelon, right? So it's like, and in certain countries, being in a larger body is still more preferred to being in a smaller body. So it's very much something that society has come up with that we've kind of all bought into, and we're not even really challenging whether those beliefs are serving us or not.
Fascinating. Like, literally with every question that I ask, it's just, I'm getting more and more in love with this, with this topic of intuitive eating. However, I have a tricky question for you. So there is disordered eating, and there is eating disorders. Is there a difference in between them, or is it the
100%.
same thing?
There is a 100% difference between disordered eating and eating disorders. And it's such a great question to ask, because eating disorders are things like anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder. And these are all diagnosable disorders according to what's called the DSM-5. So there is a list of criteria that you have to meet in order to be considered to have one of these eating disorders. Things like orthorexia is not currently recognized in the DSM-5 diagnosis. It's something that they're trying to get in there, but it's not in there yet. So orthorexia would fall under disordered eating. So disordered eating is basically anything that's not intuitive eating. It's anything where you are using external tools or behaviors to manipulate your weight, as opposed to letting your weight just fall where it's naturally supposed to be. So things like weighing yourself in order to kind of gauge where you are in a journey to get a certain weight. It is counting calories, counting macros, not eating whole food groups because you fear they lead to fat or weight gain, right? This isn't for the people who are like, have celiac disease and can't have gluten. Like, that's a totally different argument. That's fine. Measuring body parts, exercising in order to earn food or to make up for something that you've eaten, to ignore hunger cues, binging, overeating, emotionally eating. All of those things would be considered disordered eating.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. Another question that I wanted to ask you about is the following. In one of the phrases that I caught you said before, is that you said that healing your relationship with your body isn't about the food. Well, for most people, healing the relationship with the body is about the food, because, this is what we put in our body, and this is, kind of how we take care of our body, right? With using food. So if it's not the food, then what is it?
So one thing I definitely want to say is that, like, I do want everybody to understand that you can use food as a way to take care of your body. Like, I love eating vegetables and protein, and I love nutritiously dense foods, nourishing foods. I think that is one of many ways that we can take care of our bodies. But remind me of the question one more time.
Sorry, let me unmute myself. I'm mute so everybody can hear you. You said that in one of the phrases beforehand, you said that healing your relationship with your body isn't about the food.
Right.
If it's
right.
not about the food, what is it about?
It's not about the food. Your relationship is not with your body isn't about the food, because it's about something deeper than that. I find dieting and trying to lose weight or get to a goal weight to be more of a band-aid of sorts. It's something more than that we're all searching for. It's what I find is when I ask clients why they want to lose weight and they give me an answer, and then I ask them, well, why do they want that? As I kind of drill down their rationale and their thought process with just a simple question of why, I find that it comes down to 4 things. People either are looking for safety, acceptance, validation, or love. And I call it salve for short, like a salve, like an ointment that you would put on the wound. So SALVE. So safety, acceptance, love, validation. And I saw this with myself because, in my mind, originally, I thought that my problem was my weight. And when I got down to a certain weight, I would be happy and I would be confident in my body, and people would think I was, pretty and worthy, and everything would be fine. What I realized I was looking for is I was looking for a sense of validation again. I was in the adult world. I had no way to kind of measure my worth, and I wasn't getting the A or the gold star anymore. I had lost that sense of validation in my life, and I was trying to seek it through a goal weight, through looking a certain way to other people so that other people could say things like, you look so great, you look so fit, you look whatever. So part of my so it wasn't really about the food. It wasn't really about my body. I was missing that validation that I had been getting that made me feel good. Some people do it because they want to feel safe. They feel like because our society is so obsessed with thin people and we're always praising thin people, that if they're in a thinner body, they'll be safe from other people's criticism about their bodies, right? And criticism never feels good. We want to feel accepted, right? If we're in a thinner body, we're more socially acceptable. And that's an evolutionary thing. When we were, hunters and gatherers at the beginning of, humanity, if we were ostracized from the group, if the group kicked us out, we would be eaten by a predator or starved to death. So there's a very real need for us to be accepted by the people around us. And in a very thin society, of course, if you're thinner, you're going to feel like you're more accepted somehow. And love, right? Again, when we look at Hollywood movies, it's always this thin, pretty young girl that gets the guy in the end. And I know that's very, heteronormative, but just for the sake of an example, so the underlying message in all of those movies that show that one type of female lead that gets the guy, we're told, okay, well, if we don't look like that, we must not get the guy. We must not get the love that we want. So it's a deeper layer. One way that I like to explain it is through metaphor. Since I'm an English teacher, this is how I do things. It's like if you're allergic to strawberries and you continuously eat strawberries, and then you keep having to shoot yourself with an EpiPen in order to stop the allergic reaction. Weight loss and dieting is like the EpiPen. It's that temporary fix. It's that short-term fix for the allergic reaction when all you really need to do is get to the source. You need to stop eating the strawberries. If you just did that, you would never need the diet. So if we just heal our relationship with ourselves, give ourselves the safety, acceptance, love, and validation that we need in a different way, in a more healthy way, we wouldn't need diets to get it done, because diets aren't addressing the root cause in the way that we need them to.
That is awesome. And I love the metaphor. Like, that is like true. Like, let's treat the root of the problem than the actual symptoms. But does that mean that you do not, like with intuitive nutrition, you do not need, or you like, actually, no, let me paraphrase the question. Do you need to follow some kind of plan, nutrition plan or exercise plan within the intuitive nutrition coaching program? Is there something you still need to have?
You don't need a plan with intuitive eating. I do feel like, life happens. We're all very busy. A lot of us work outside of the home, and it's not practical to, on a whim, be able to whip up whatever meal that you want. So I very much encourage my clients to do things like meal prepping, which is something that a lot of people who are on diets also do. But I like to frame it as a way to prepare nourishing, nutrient-dense foods that you can have in your fridge, that you can grab at the ready if you want them, but it's not a rigid plan that you have to stick to. It's not like if you make salads for lunch for the week that you have to have a salad every single day if you have the opportunity to have something else. But it's just a way that with our busy schedules, we can have nutritious foods ready to go if we want them. And I work outside of my house for a good portion of the day, so I have to plan my breakfasts and lunches and snacks, and that's totally okay to do. I definitely have a certain time of the day that I usually work out. I usually work out 6 days a week, but I really like exercise. I love lifting heavy and doing, and I don't really love cardio. I do it because I know I need to get my heart rate up, but I try to pick things that I enjoy. Like, I love bar classes. I love MMA style fighting stuff. I don't like high intensity interval training. I don't like HIIT. So kind of, I do have a consistent schedule. I like the challenge of exercise, and I do it consistently. So yeah, there's definitely structure that you can have in place. And one of the things that I think is really beautiful about being an intuitive eater is you realize that there are just certain foods that don't feel good in your body. and you just decide you don't want to eat them, not because you're fearful of them or fearful of weight gain, or because they're unhealthy, just because they don't go well with your, digestive system. So that's another, I think, really key thing about intuitive eating that I want people to know is it's all about, instead of, focusing on what our weight is, we focus on how our body feels after we eat something. So that kind of helps to dispel the myth that all you'll do is eat cake and ice cream, because if you did that all the time, you would feel like crap. You would feel so bad. Like your body would be like, I need something fresh right now because I need like certain vitamins and minerals that you're not giving me here. So, I've learned, for example, that I don't like fried food. There's something about it. It must be the type of oil that restaurants cook with that doesn't agree with my body, but I'll end up like not being able to poop for 3 days. Like it's just like and I just feel like super bloated and just like not comfortable. And I'm like, all right, well, it's not because fried foods are unhealthy, but I know every time I eat them, I feel like crap. So I'm just going to avoid them. Like I don't need them. I don't feel restricted for not having them. I just know that that's something that doesn't agree with me. And when I was a dieter, if there was like a dessert table at like a holiday or something, I would have one of everything, even if I didn't like it, just because it was there and it was like my opportunity to have a cheat day. But now, like if someone gives me a donut, I don't like donuts. Like I'm very picky with my desserts now because I know I can have them whenever I want. So I'm more of like an ice cream girl, but I don't need cookies, or I don't need like donuts and pastries. That's just not my jam. And I can have broccoli every single day and be so happy. I love broccoli. So it's finding a balance by concentrating on how you feel as opposed to what your body looks like or how much it weighs.
I can certainly relate. I feel the same after curry. Like I love curry, but I don't like the feeling after curry. So I literally eat it so rarely. And only if I don't even know what needs to happen for me to have curry, like chicken curry, because it's just something that is for exact same reason. I love the taste, but I don't like the after feeling. And then I choose for myself because I'm going to feel bad for the next 3 days. I know that. So I choose for myself, for my sake, that I'm just going to order a different like kind of type of food. I'm not going to use. So I am an intuitive eater now, after all.
Yes, you are, girl. I love it.
Amazing. Okay, so you've told us so much about everything, but obviously you do need somebody, like we do need more information on it. So how can the listeners, the viewers, how can they find you? I also know that you have a book coming sometime in spring. So how can they find you? How can they find your book? Where are you to help all of us? And also like if you offer some kind of coaching, or perhaps you have a pre-recorded program, whatever that is people need, if they realize that intuitive nutrition is their thing, how can they find you and what can you do for them?
So people can find me at freedomwithfoodandfitness.com. I'm mostly in terms of social media on Instagram. So I'm at Freedom with Food and Fitness. And yeah, I have a book coming out in the spring of 2023 with Urano Publishing. So it's going to be published worldwide, English and Spanish in all formats, hardcover, softcover, ebook, audiobook. And it's called Freedom with Food and Fitness, How Intuitive Eating is the Key to Being Your Happiest, Healthiest Self. So that pretty much says exactly what intuitive eating is. Yeah, but I do offer group coaching virtually. So anyone around the world can join my program. It's called Defy the Diet, and it's a 10-week group coaching program. There is private coaching built into it, worksheets, meditations, private Facebook group, all of the accountability and support that someone would need in order to start or continue on an intuitive eating journey. We go over the principles. We go over realistic strategies to implement this in your life today. And we also dig into the mindset work that we were talking about before, the safety, acceptance, love, validation, like all of the reasons we might have thoughts and beliefs around food and health in our bodies, and how to kind of challenge and get rid of some of the beliefs that maybe aren't serving us and pick ones that serve us better.
That sounds amazing. And you actually stole my next question, because I was like, so how does your coaching? Because we all use different approaches to help people. And like, that's what I wanted to ask, how's your coaching works, but like you've already explained it all. So I just want to thank you for your time. Thank you for agreeing to do this interview, this talk for the Fit Faces app. And I hope everybody who feels right now that intuitive nutrition is for them, if this is something like that you want to introduce into your life, you can go and you can find Alana on her Instagram, on her webpage, buy her book in spring, don't forget about that. And we will have all the links under this video. So whatever you guys want, wherever you guys want to find Alana, the information will be under this video. So you can click on whatever link and ask Alana a question. Thank you very much, Alana.
Thank you, Natalia.